So I think this is where I left off reading Dr. Kelly Brogan's article that she posted called An Open Letter to the Spiritual Community from Psychiatry or something like that. So I'll just keep reading it just because I feel like giving voice to it helps to actually allow the nervous system to resonate with it or not. And I read it over and it really resonated with me, so reading it out loud to myself feels resonant. So when I do read things that people write, it's not for copyright. I actually feel like a lot of us in this neuro tribe need to hear things more than we need to read them on a computer screen. It's difficult to read, especially if we're on medication. So it could actually be helpful to have some of these profoundly important blog posts read out as podcasts or something, because sometimes it's really difficult to read. So we're trying to spread this message, and there's a lot of people out there trying to spread different parts of this message in their own unique and beautiful way. But when it's but mainly as words on a computer screen or words in a book, I think we're forgetting how our brains, when we're on meds, a lot of the time have a lot of trouble with that medium. We don't have trouble watching TV or listening to music, so why wouldn't we make it something that's watchable and listenable, not just books, which maybe people of a consciousness that isn't being drugged up right now can read, but I remember it was very difficult for me to read for a long period of time. So I'm not intending any kind of copyright infringement. At the very least, I'm actually saying this is amazing, and I think it needs to be heard out loud, and I want to say it out loud to myself. And I'm going to put it on video, because if I ever do come back to it again, it'll be likely in the form of my own videos. So I would encourage people who are creating these beautiful messages to put them into some kind of podcast format. And this is probably an idea for myself, make it into some kind of podcast. And there are podcasts, but imagine if there was a huge library of wonderful blog posts that people could just listen to instead of read. I feel like we need to translate more of this into spoken word. Let's do it. So I am going to read the rest of this by Kelly Brogan, Dr. Kelly Brogan. But I'm going to read it kind of quiet because I don't have the privacy that I used to. And maybe I'll just have to out myself about talking to myself and tell people, quiet, self-dialogue in session. I think this is where I left off. This is Kelly Brogan's words. We are steeped in many centuries of conditioning, largely thanks to denominational religion, that has led us to separate the material and the sacred. ... Perhaps for this reason it is not common in spiritual circles to explore our relationship to our bodies and to the external authority that controls them, the medical system. I like how she points that out. Seems like the medical system controls us from the day we are born, pumping us full of drugs and the mother full of drugs, so those drugs are in us, and then pumping us full of vaccines, and then this whole world manifests from that. It may not be obvious that Orthodox medicine is itself a belief system. And I've talked about this myself because I say the whole mental health diagnosis thing is a story, and it's a pretty crappy story. And that's why I tell myself millions of other words to keep that story away from me. It's a type of inoculation against the memes of psychiatry. And the only way to do that is to create more powerful memes with my own voice and my own nervous system, and say them to myself and see them to myself and be them to myself. Kelly Brogan. As my mentor, Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez, told me, medicine is an unacknowledged religion, complete with its own language, costume, and places of worship. But through many interesting twists and turns in history, including the Flexner Report commissioned by Rockefeller that sought to single-handedly dismiss all and every non-pharmaceutical form of medicine, We have been told a story about the objective dominance of conventional medicine relative to all others. It's important to know that it is a story so that you can be aware you are tethered to a religion, perhaps unwittingly. A religion that says your body is broken and dangerous, that you cannot spontaneously heal, that you require the help of medications and surgeries to get by and survive, and that genes and bad luck are behind your health struggles. That this isn't personal, it's not meaningful, and you just need to manage the situation. Odds are, this is not what you believe. Odds are, if you were reading this, you believe in the sacred design of your bodily vessel. You believe that everything has meaning. You believe that struggle and suffering lead to breakthroughs, and you must plumb the depths of your personal hell in order to transform it into heaven. And that's definitely what I've been doing with self-dialogue with myself, creating a lot of meaning, seeing a lot of meaning in all of this, and transforming my hell into heaven. And the process of self-dialogue seems to help with this, because if one just believes that everything has meaning but doesn't actually see the meaning, make the meaning, create the meaning, say the meaning, understand the meaning, then where is the meaning? We have to unfold the meaning through our own process, through our own insights and our own eyes and hearts, and make the meaning and understand it, not just say, well, it doesn't mean that, it means something else, it has meaning. Well, what is meaning? Meaning isn't anything, it's everything. It's the meaning in the moment, and then dropping it and moving to the next meaning, not holding any particular meaning. 3, we need to make room for falling apart. With my patients and in my online community, there's a lot of struggle, suicidality, hopelessness, and distorted thinking. And it doesn't scare me. That's because I know that if I can provide a solid container for it all to fall apart, then the alchemy of the wound takes place, and everything transforms. I never prescribe, ever. My patients know that I could prescribe, but I don't. So they know that they have only one choice. Let the energy move through and look for the teaching. That is a beautiful statement. Let the energy move through and look for the teaching. I would say the energy moving through is the teaching as well. Kelly Brogan, no conditions, no negotiations. And it does transform every time. But if you have ever been told that this kind of struggle is okay, and you don't recognize that, you still believe in the religion of medicine, then how could you possibly move through this space? That's like a woman in labor at home wearing headphones that say, you can't do this, you're going to kill your baby. What are you doing, you reckless moron? We have to expose these influences and also acknowledge that it is our responsibility as a community to begin to hold space for it all to fall apart. Hold space for non-functionality, because one of the greatest ironies is that medication is often justified on the grounds that patients are not able to function otherwise. But what of the fact that medication is the ultimate cause of long-term disability? We as a culture are terrified of grief, pain, suffering, and struggle. Tears, in fact, are a diagnosable symptom in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Psychiatry. We must make room, real room for the ugly in order to allow these rites of initiation to take effect. It takes the tribe to hold space for that. One man cannot do it alone. And that's why I really want to create a space of respite for sure. I've created myself as a dream center, as my own respite, but it's very challenging for people to do. As more people do it, it will become easier. 4, there is a way to work with the energy from a more solid foundation. While I have come to believe that all illness involves a personal teaching and a psychospiritual origin co-created by the patient, I believe in multiple narratives and that the body has its own story to tell. I too know there are multiple narratives. I've spouted out many myself, and I don't necessarily believe any of them. And when I also feel that these supposed illnesses have not just a personal teaching, but a teaching for all of humanity together, not separate individuals, but how we're interconnected. That's part of the teaching, is that we're so intertwined and interconnected, and it's not that personal, but the personal being can actually learn something through it, and that actually affects the whole of humanity if one person learns something really profound and is initiated into a process of profound learning continually unfolding. Those who struggle with their mental well-being also struggle with their physical well-being, whether they know it or not. Even the literature suggests that they are not discrete in the way that we have been led to believe, that in fact 5 million people with bipolar disorder may actually have physical imbalances at the root of their uncontrolled experiences. And I don't mean chemical imbalances in their brains. They are the canaries in the coal mine whose bodily mechanisms are sensitive to toxin exposure, processed foods, and otherwise industrial lifestyles, as much as they are sensitive to the many layers of wrongness unfolding on our planet today. That is so beautifully succinct and sums up many, many of my hours of babbling to myself. I have found that physical healing, remember that body we were told to transcend, must be the foundation of a powerful spiritual process. That's why I lead with controversial dietary self-exploration and believe that nutritional dogma can be a tremendous handicap, and I recommend daily detox methodologies in addition to community and meditation, because it may be that your body says no to an exposure through so-called mania, psychosis, or suicidal depression. Now that's something I haven't really explored too much, that statement, because it may be that your body says no to an exposure through so-called mania, psychosis, or suicidal depression. But I have talked about how things that we perceive that we're sensitive to get translated into the sound of our own ego voice amplified as kind of a way to say no. I didn't really extrapolate that to toxic exposures in the physical so much, but that could be true as well, for sure. ... 5. In order to choose, you have to know what's possible. Perhaps the most important truth I am here to share is predicated on one of the principal tenets of ethical medicine, informed consent. Informed consent implies the exploration and confirmed awareness of all known risks, benefits, and alternatives. In addition to peeking behind the curtain of medication efficacy and other safety to see the small man pulling the strings, you need to know what is really possible in order to make a choice that feels empowering to you. Did you know that you could put schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, OCD, panic attacks, chronic fatigue, ADHD, major depression with suicidality, eating disorders, and generalized anxiety into total remission without medication, and even in spite of it? Watch what these people have to say about their experiences doing just that. Did you know that you could shed these labels and walk into the wilderness of your life only to encounter the real you? I've come to believe from the hundreds of patients and online participants who tell me the same thing after they come off medication. They finally feel like themselves. That psychiatric medication makes the deepest spiritual work largely impossible. It's almost like cutting the chrysalis to free the struggling caterpillar before it has metamorphosed into a winged creature ready to set aloft. But if you didn't know what awaited you on the other end of your dance with psychiatry, you might imagine that euthanasia or suicide is the only option. As one mother of a schizophrenic son disabled by medication thought 1 month before completing a program of comprehensive healing that gave her son's life back and then some. My mission is to make sure that as many people on this planet know that the presumed incurability of chronic disease is a myth and that healing is eminently possible, because only then you can truly make an informed choice. Perhaps this is triggering you and you feel anger, maybe towards me, indignation, or a sense of defeat. The reason I want to bring this message to you and to your tribe is because I know you aren't daunted by uncertainty and confusion. I know that you can sit with this reaction and let it transform. I know that you are fundamentally curious. I know that you say yes to what life sets before you in so many arenas. But I also know that no one should be walking this path alone. It may be our job as a community to begin, one by one, to say yes to ourselves, fully in all ways. Yes to a high level of self-care, to devotion, to the messages our body is attempting to send, to our felt wrongness, to our wild energies, to our very souls slamming the walls of the small boxes we have stuffed them into. But we have to do this together. We have to lock eyes and say, if you don't do it, I'll do it. Please help me to divine the means and method of relooming the frayed fabric of a tribe that already knows the beauty of this life and that has the power to hold space for radical transformation and healing from the messiness, bigness, and scariness of illness. We already know that the universe moves through us, each of us, and all of us, with as fierce a grace as it knows we can handle. For more information and data, if you love science that confirms spiritual tenets, I've collected my findings, beliefs in my book, A Mind of Your Own. I feel like that last beautiful bit she wrote there is kind of similar to the bit I wrote in its rhythm, in a way. Different words, but pointing to the same thing. She said, please help me to divine the means and method of relooming the frayed fabric of a tribe that already knows the beauty of this life and that has the power to hold space for radical transformational healing from the messiness, bigness, and scariness of illness. We already know that the universe moves through us, each of us, and all of us, with as fierce a grace as it knows we can handle. And I wrote, I'm not trying to compare, I'm just saying the rhythm of it sounds similar. Our brains are resilient, neuroplastic, and quantum with infinite capacity to learn, unfold, and create. We've seen and touched possibilities yet to be made manifest, so hold these visions in your heart so that the minds of the many might be touched and see the possible world too. Maybe I'll put that in the little comment thing at the bottom. So that's a really amazing article. I will put the link in the comments box. I recommend reading it, and there's links in the article, so reading those too would probably be a really good idea. So I may make another video, I don't know. I need to edit these and start on the social enterprise course. So much to do, and hopefully I can talk about what I'm doing in that realm, as well as continue to talk about the 100 pages of insights that I've written down to continue to honor that process, because that's part of what has got me this far, and it's hard to breathe in this room.